Good morning. I wanted to talk to people about tipping and whether you should tip your hairdresser. There's a big debate going on about whether you should tip your hairdresser or whether hairdressers should accept tips. And you know what? I'm not even going to talk about whether hairdressers should accept tips. I'm not going to put it on that, but I'm going to talk about whether you, the consumer, the customer, the client, whether you should tip your hairdresser. And this is where I'm going to have a little bit more. I'm not going to tell you whether you should or shouldn't, but I want to give you a couple things to think about. First of all, what is tipping? What is tipping for? Traditionally, tipping is for low-wage earners who don't have the ability to become upwardly mobile with their income through hard work and dedication and loyalty, right? They just flat out make minimum wage, servers, doormen in a hotel, that kind of thing, where they're underpaid, specifically underpaid, because there is an expectation that their income will be supplemented by gratuities. And I believe in certain parts of the United States, they're even allowed to pay below minimum wage for servers and bartenders, etc., because, like, substantially below, because they know they're going to be getting tips and they can rely on this, X amount of income for tips. And to me, those are the people who should get tipped. And it's based on, the ability that you don't have an opportunity to become upwardly mobile, right? Like that's really what it is. You're stuck at minimum wage, so you rely on gratuities in order to feed your family. And for years, that made total sense, right? The doorman in your building, maybe he's an old man now, but he may have worked there for 30 or 40 years. He might have put his kids through college by, tips, and particularly at Christmas. But I want to talk about hairdressers today and whether you should be tipping your hairdresser. And I want to give you a couple of things to think about. There's two kinds of hairdressers. There are generally, I'm going to speak in general statements here. There's two kinds of hairdressers, and then I'm going to break down some subcategories of one of them. There are independent contractors like renters. They're self-employed. And then there are employees, meaning they're employed by a salon and they are generally paid a commission. There's other avenues of pay, but generally it's a commission. And for the sake of this argument or this conversation, I'm going to make the math as simple as humanly possible, and I'm going to make that commission 50%. Yes, I know some people don't get 50%. Yes, I know some people are 40%, some people are higher. I'm going to keep it at 50% because it's just an easy thing for the math. So let's talk about the employee-based hairdresser first. And should you tip that person? Everything hinges on what you are charged. And let's just break it down to a haircut price. Because in a decent salon, now, by the way, guys, I'm not talking about your budget hair salon that competes to be the lowest price salon in the neighborhood, like a Great Clips. Tip the shit out of those guys because they are busting their asses and they're probably doing 4 haircuts an hour at 15 or 20 bucks. And yes, they're essentially billing $80 an hour, but they are working really, really hard for it. They need those tips. So I'm not speaking about the cheapest of the cheap. I'm not speaking about the most budget. I'm not speaking about a mall salon. Okay, I'm not speaking about giant corporate mall salons that have the lowest prices. I'm not talking about those guys. I'm talking about normal hair salons in a normal situation. And myself, I came from an inexpensive hair salon, charging 25 bucks for a haircut 30 years ago, to today where I charge $250 for a haircut 30 years later, which probably has not even kept up with inflation, even though I've raised my price by 10 times that amount. But let's talk about those hairdressers. So we'll assume they're making 50% commission, and let's just say they're charging $50 a haircut. And if they take an hour for that haircut, that means their end of that $50 an hour or $50 haircut is $25. Okay, so that person essentially, and again, basic math, is making $25 an hour. So let's do the math on what $25 an hour is. $25 an hour based on an 8-hour day is $200 a day. Based on 5 days a week is $1,000 a week times 4 is $4,000 a month times 12 is $48,000 a year. So that is their base salary potential at $50 for a haircut. If they were fully booked 8 hours a day at $50 an hour, they're making 48 grand a year. Now, that's at the sort of lower end of the mid-range of the industry right now. So does somebody with a salary of $48,000 a year deserve a gratuity? Maybe. You know, they probably could certainly appreciate it. So let's just say that $50 haircut, that person, you know, I'm not even going to talk about color because color is a whole nother thing and you can charge a lot of money for color. But we're just talking about somebody who's billing $50 an hour. Okay, so now let's make that person $100 an hour. We're going to factor in hair color. And let's say that person bills $800 a day, which is very normal in our industry. 2 big colors at $400 a color, $800 a day. 3 colors at, you know, $275 a color, you're talking $800 a day. So $800 a day divided by 2 is $400 a day to the hairdresser. Times 5, that's 2 grand a week. Times 4 is 8 grand a month. Sorry, I'm driving to work and my math isn't so good here. But you're talking about somebody making $96,000 a year. Now, does that person deserve gratuities? This is what you should be basing your decisions on. The higher they charge you, the lower the gratuity should be, in my opinion. The less pressure you should feel as a client to tip. And now, by the way, guys, I want to tell you something. Tipping hairdressers is not the same percentage ratio as tipping servers, right? When we hand you that machine that says 10, 20, 30, maybe even 40% on it, and you're like, oh shit, I'm going to tip, I don't want to go the cheapest, I'm going to tip 20%. If you're tipping 20% on a $400 service, you're tipping $80, okay? Maybe they did your hair for 4 hours. You're tipping them an additional $20 an hour is what you're tipping them. I feel like that's high, guys. If you're going to tip that hairdresser, that higher priced hairdresser, you don't need to go over 10%. Okay? Never go over 10%. First of all, never feel pressured to tip that hairdresser. Do tip your $50 haircut hairdresser. They're needing it, they're relying on it, and hopefully they're going to become upwardly mobile and eventually get to a place that they don't rely on tips to live. But at that lower end, they're probably relying on your tips. They're very appreciated. Tips are always appreciated, but they're very, very potentially necessary, right? But the goal of a hairdresser should be to continue to get busier and raise their price. And by the way, guys, hairdressers might comment and say, yeah, but just because you charge $50 an hour doesn't mean you're fully booked. Well, is that the client's problem that you're not fully booked? Really? You have the potential to earn that much. So it's your job to live up to your potential to fill in those hours. And the beauty, and this is the thing, guys, the beauty of this is once you're a fully booked hairdresser, you get to raise your price. You get to give yourself a raise by raising your price. That's how I charge $250 for a haircut today. I started out at $25 30 years ago. Now I'm $250. You have that ability to be upwardly mobile. That's the beauty of it. The busier you get, the more demand you create for yourself. So you get to raise your price. You get to give yourself a raise. What other industry, by the way, can potentially give themselves a 10% raise every year? Pretty awesome, right? Pretty awesome. I like that. So that's how I want you to think about tipping. First of all, 20%, don't think of us, we're not servers, we're not making minimum wage. So even the lower end hairdresser, 10% in my opinion is good. Now, let's talk about the other end of the industry, the independent contractor, the chair renter, that person. What you have to understand, if your hairdresser is self-employed, guys, that hairdresser sets their own prices 100% straight across the board. So whether they're charging you $100 and you're giving them an additional $20, if they really wanted that $120 for that service, why didn't they just set the price at that and just charge that? It's all going into the same pile. So whether you tip or not, they're setting the price based on what their needs are as a business. And again, I get it. They set the price on what the lower end of what they think that they can get so they can fill their book. And yes, every little bit on top of that is is, appreciated. But in my opinion, if you have become a busy enough hairdresser to become self-employed, that generally means you have a pretty full book. I don't want to, I know a lot of people who underreport as well. I know a lot of chair renters who make the mid-range of, well over $100,000 a year, and they may play a little fast and loose with their reporting, particularly with cash. But that's a different conversation. So I don't want to say all, but I used to do it, guys. When I owned my first 2-chair salon, it's 25 years ago now, so I'm past any point of getting in trouble for it. But a lot of our business was cash back then, and I absolutely underreported, and I feel like I'm a pretty straightforward guy. I think a lot of people do. So I'm just saying I did it, so I assume other people. I'm not assuming, I know other people do it or did it. But anyway, you don't need to tip that person. First of all, they're making more money. And this is where all the chair renters and independent contractors cry foul, and they all go, yeah, but I have to pay my rent, and I have to pay my product costs, and I have to pay my taxes. Well, guess what, dumbass? Everybody pays taxes, right? We don't talk about a post-tax income. We talk about a pre-tax income for everybody straight across the board. So stop talking about your taxes. Nobody gives a shit about your taxes, okay? And all of your product costs are write-off. All of your business expenses are write-offs anyways. So it's a little bit different than a 50% commission employee. And by the way, guys, if that 50% commission employee, if that situation was advantageous, there wouldn't be chair renters. So those guys are making the money that I gave you when I was talking about that 50% employee. The chair renter is probably making at least 20% more than that, and probably not claiming as much either. So it's gray market to a degree. There's a lot of shadiness to a degree, and I'm not shitting on chair renters. I know tons of my friends do it. So I'm just saying that person is 100% solely in charge of their pricing. Now so maybe, again, that 10% thing is the cap, in my opinion. Now I want to talk about why I stopped accepting tips. I went to this seminar 15 years ago, and I sat in on it, and this person was talking about gratuities, and it made me think about it differently, because I've worked in the service industry since I was 14 years old, right? I worked at McDonald's, then I was a busser in restaurants, I was a bartender while I was in hair school, I was a server for years, all these things. I've always had my hand out looking for that gratuity, and I sat in on this seminar, and it made me think about things differently. And first of all, because I'm one of these guys that I want respect in the regular world, right? You tell people you're a hairdresser, sometimes they used to look a little bit down on you. And I'm one of these people that wants to be treated like a professional. I look at, British hairdressers wearing suits, and I'm like, those are the guys that I see as professionals. They carry themselves a certain way. I want to be seen like that all across the board, as a professional, where we're respected for what we do. So I sat in on this seminar, and they said, okay, who do you want? Which column who takes tips? Servers, doormen, cab drivers, Uber drivers, bartenders, and strippers. And that was one column. Okay, tattoo artists. Yeah, there's a handful of other people. Okay, that's one column. And then, who are the professionals in this industry that we aspire to be respected like outside of gratuities? Doctors. Look, there's all these hairdressers like, I'm a doctor of the scalp. Like, first, no, you're not. Okay, because you know what a couple of scalp conditions look like, and you know what dry hair looks like. Anyway, but where do you want to be seen? What kind of income do you want to earn? We want to be seen in that doctor, lawyer, accountant, and maybe carpenter. Even people, okay, let's say tradespeople who work with their hands but make a good living. A welder, right? A good welder's making $90 an hour. People at the high end of trades, they don't get tips, guys. They don't get tipped. Okay? So my feeling is, when I took this seminar, I was like, holy shit. Where do I want to be seen? Where do I want to be seen in the world here? Now, in order for me to be seen that way, I have to start charging a higher income, right? I have to stop relying on the tips and start building the price that I want to earn from tips into what I'm billing per hour. And this is where those independent stylists, they have control of what they bill per hour. I'm the owner of a salon. I have control of what I bill per hour. But anytime any of my staff come to me and say, I want to raise my prices, I'm like, hell yeah. And they'll say, I want to raise it 5. I'm like, you don't think you can raise it 10? I want my staff to keep raising their prices. If they think they're ready to do it, I'm ready to do it with them. But that's as an aside. So I took the seminar and I sat there and I was like, Dad, that really made me think about things, but I didn't have the guts to do it. I didn't quite have the guts to stop taking tips. But then I started thinking about, working towards carrying myself more as a professional. And I think this was partly where I started to really grow as an educator as well, because as I started, we opened our academy, and I started carrying myself a little bit more like well, maybe some people might argue this, but carrying myself a little bit more like a professional. And I thought it's important for me to bill what I think I'm worth, given what I give to my clients in terms of the location of my business, the vibe of my business, the service that we offer, the non-rushed, amazing shampoo, massage, all of those things, and hopefully my expertise and the quality of my work, the care that I put into the quality of my work. So this is where I started really raising my prices. I went to a Ted Gibson seminar, and I was charging like $65 for a haircut at the time, and Ted was charging $650 in New York. And he goes, and I'm raising my price to $950. And I was like, if Ted Gibson can get $950 in New York, I can get $95 in Vancouver. And I raised my price to $95, much to the chagrin of some of my clients. But I was fully booked, several months in advance. So I raised them to $95. I lost a few people, gained a few people. Today at $250, I raised my price to that high price point quite a while ago. And part of it was to stop. I didn't want to take all the new business in my salon. I wanted to make sure my team was getting new business, and I didn't want to compete with my team. So I wanted to elevate myself to a higher standard, a higher level. And I thought, if I'm going to elevate myself to that amount, I need to stop accepting gratuities, because I'm now carrying myself at, the low end of what a lawyer might bill per hour. And I want to be seen that way. I want to be seen as the top end of my industry. And I feel like at the top end of our industry, you should not be taking tips. I just feel like that's the way it simply should be. You bill what you want to get paid, and that's it. And then you take the pressure off the client. And this is the thing that a lot of hairdressers are missing. Clients feel stress when they get that thing turned in front of. I get stressed every single time. Like, now you have to opt out of tipping everywhere you go. When they give you that thing and it says tipping, you have to press no tip. Drives me mental. It's disgusting, in my opinion. It creates a negativity that you, the hairdresser, do not understand. For every client that insists on giving you a tip, there's 10 that are stressed out and feeling like, how much am I supposed to tip? If I tip this, will the hairdresser treat me well the next time? Is it going to be seen as too much? They're already going, holy shit, this price was high. You know how many complaints I get in my business? Hopefully not that many, but I get complaints from people, and I look at they're unhappy with their hair, they're unhappy with their service, but they still tipped 15-20%. And that's because they felt pressure. I look at their bills when they write to say they hate their hair or they had a bad experience, and they still tipped. And that's because they feel pressured to, guys. I want to take that pressure off of you. You come sit in my chair, the price is the price. Now, I may raise my prices. Prices are subject to change without notice. I may raise my prices, but you are never going to be pressured or feel pressured to tip me. It does not happen in my chair. I want to take that pressure off the client. And I feel, by the way, guys, at the time I started doing it, it was a pretty rare thing. I don't think there was a lot of people doing it. Now, there's a big debate on a popular Instagram page about tipping, and I'm seeing like a good 25% of the people are not taking tips. And I go, okay, there is a change in our industry. People are elevating their pricing to incorporate tips to take that pressure off of their client and to be seen as more of a professional. Now, I'm not saying you're not professional if you don't take tips, but I am saying, guys, which category do you want to be seen in? When you talk about what you do for a living, do you want to be seen in the cab driver, server, and I was a server for many years. It's different, guys. They don't have the control of their income the way we do. Okay? So which category do you want to be seen as? Server, stripper, door person, or doctor, lawyer, high-priced tradesperson? I want to be in the second column, guys. That's where I want to be. So for you, as a client, I hope I've given you a little bit of perspective on how much you should tip your hairdresser. And by the way, I'm going to just say this because I'm a little bit of a whore, but I had a client the other day give me like the tip handshake, and she's one of my top clients. She's been with us for 25 years, pressing that bill into my hand and say, I know you don't take tips. Take your wife out to dinner. Christmas, I'm going to take a gift. Okay. I had another client, same day. She brought me a bottle of wine, and inside that bottle of wine was a very generous Amazon gift card. And I know you don't take tips. I normally give you a basket of something. Here's a little gift. And it's a little bit different. Okay. Christmas time, people want to give, but all year long, my clients know that I don't accept tips. And I'm going to be honest, guys, I think they appreciate it. I think they do. I think they walk out of there going, my hairdresser doesn't even take tips. That's how fucking awesome my hairdresser is. I don't know. Here's my lesson. Raise your price to the point that tips are not a factor for you and you're getting paid exactly what you want to get paid. And I'm going to just end on this one little note from my main man, Crazy Bob, who did change the way I looked at a lot of things in this industry. And I attribute a lot of my success to Robert Chromians. And some of you guys, I don't know. I'm just going to say he changed my life many, many years ago. In one of his CDs that I used to listen to, it said, tips are crumbs. And he goes, I don't eat crumbs. I eat cake. I want you to think about that, guys.